Yesterday, our officers responded to this location. We received a 911 call. There was someone who had informed us that they had found a toddler. We believe the young boy that was found is approximately 2 to 3 years of age. He was found wearing a t-shirt and diapers, and that's it.
When I got out of my car, I heard the baby crying. So I walked over and I realized he was by himself. He's very pleasant, very friendly. I asked him, where's your mommy? And he kind of just pointed kind of like everywhere. And I reached out my hand for him. He grabbed my hand and I just walked around the complex hoping that I would find somebody looking for him or calling his name.
For a parent, one of the most terrifying fears is being separated from your child. You might fear that your child will go missing or get lost or be taken away from you. You grip your child's hand tightly when you're out in public, and you never take your eyes off of them. We live in a world where 2,000 kids are reported missing every single day, and we've heard enough terrible stories to know that it could very likely happen to our child if we're not vigilant. However, what if your child wasn't the one that went missing? What if it was your hand that was pried away from your son? What if it was your face that was on the missing persons poster? What if your son was waiting at home for you to return and you were unable to reach him? On today's episode, we're examining a high-profile case in which a mother and her son were separated by a self-proclaimed witch. Thanks to the public and social media, the son has been safely returned to family, but his young mother is still missing and in need of our help. On July 26th of 2020, Leila Cavett became one of the missing. Leila Cavett was born in 1999 and raised in Jasper, Alabama. She was a biracial girl with black hair, brown eyes, and a really beautiful smile. Although we don't know much about her upbringing and background, we do know that at some point in her teenage years, Leila had gotten involved with drugs and would sometimes not be in contact with her family during these times. If you know anyone suffering from drug addiction or a drug dependency, you know that it's very common for them to stop contacting anyone when they are relapsing, and I believe that is what Leila was dealing with. At the age of 19, Leila had been talking to a guy named Danny, and a few months later, she discovered that she was pregnant. It was a shock to both of them, but Leila decided to keep her baby boy, named Camden, and dedicate her life to raising him. She did not put Danny's name on the baby's birth certificate, because the two of them weren't really dating or in a committed relationship. After Camden was born, Leila really tried to be better for her son, and her family said she would never go anywhere without him. At this time in her life, Leila didn't have a job, and she was kind of hopping around between the houses of family and friends. She was no longer living in Alabama, and was now living in Dawsonville, Georgia with her uncle, after she had a falling out with the friend she had been staying with. Dawsonville is about an hour outside of the city of Atlanta. On July 16th of 2020, Leila spoke to her sister on the phone, and her sister recalled that she seemed completely normal. She didn't mention any plans to go out of town, and she didn't seem concerned or worried about anything. A few days later, she told her uncle that she was going to drive down to Florida, but with no job or money, her uncle didn't really believe her. Although Danny wasn't listed on the birth certificate for Camden, he did speak with Leila frequently about their son, and he would help Leila financially. On July 23rd, Leila called Danny and told him that Camden needed to go to the dentist, so Danny sent her $60 through Western Union. Leila also borrowed $40 from her uncle and was selling some of her personal items online. On July 24th, Leila and Camden drove from Dawsonville, Georgia to Vero Beach, Florida in Leila's white Chevy 3500 truck. They were captured on surveillance video eating at a Cracker Barrel restaurant. At 3:09 p.m. that same day, Leila was on surveillance video again at the Racetrack gas station in Hollywood, Florida. She can be seen driving a gold Lexus, parking the car in front of the station and walking inside by herself. Later that night at 10:16 p.m., she's seen again going into the same gas station, except she has Camden on her hip in this video. She was driving the gold Lexus in this video as well, and this is the last time that her or Camden are spotted on surveillance video. On Sunday, July 26th of 2020, Ebony Williams was returning to her home at the Edge Apartments in Miramar, Florida, when she noticed something very strange. She spotted 2-year-old Camden walking around in the parking lot with only a t-shirt and a diaper to cover him. She had never seen Camden before, and she was worried that the child had gotten out of his apartment or separated from his mother somehow. Ebony asked the little boy where his mother was, and he pointed around in every direction, as if he wasn't sure which way she had went. Camden was very dirty, covered in sand, and his diaper was soiled. After asking a few people around the apartment complex, Ebony realized that Camden's parents were nowhere nearby, and she called the police. The police made a report and shared pictures of Camden all across social media in hopes that his parents would see his picture and come to find him. This social media blast is how I first became aware of Leila Cavett's disappearance. I saw this beautiful little boy pop up on my newsfeed, and I was captivated by this case immediately. Of course, the criticism for Camden's parents started right away. How could a parent lose their son? They were probably neglectful and dropped him off to get rid of him. However, the story behind this boy's rescue would take a deep dive into the rabbit hole and be so much more than what anyone online expected. Leila's sister was scrolling through social media one day when the picture of her little nephew showed up. At first, she thought that it was just a picture her sister had shared, until she realized that it was from the Broward County Police Department. This made no sense to her. How could Camden and Leila be all the way in Florida? And if Camden had been found alone, where was Leila? She immediately contacted the police and told them that she was 100% sure that this little boy was her nephew. After it was verified that the family was telling the truth, the process began to reunite Camden with his family and his biological father, who was taking steps to prove his paternity and gain custody of his son. Meanwhile, the police began their search for Leila. After speaking with the family and learning that Leila was incredibly attentive to Camden, the police knew that she didn't leave her son willingly. Leila didn't have any connections to Florida. She didn't have a job, and she barely had any money. So her motive for traveling to Florida was a complete mystery to everyone involved. On Wednesday, July 29th, Leila's white truck was found in a Walmart parking lot in Hollywood, Florida. This parking lot was just 2 miles away from the apartment complex where Camden was found, but Leila was nowhere near her abandoned truck. The police noticed that the driver's side window was broken, and the visor on the driver's side was bent out of its natural position. They found a red substance inside of the truck that appeared to be blood, and they found shovels in the back of the truck that also contained red droplets that were believed to be blood. They kept surveillance on this truck and finally spotted a man approaching it, who they immediately brought in for questioning. This man was 38-year-old Shannon Ryan, who was a resident of Muscle Shoals, Alabama, and he claimed that Leila had sold him the white truck. After further questioning and little evidence to tie Shannon to Leila's disappearance, the police told him they would keep in touch as they continued their investigation. To fully understand Leila's case and the suspect Shannon Ryan, I need to tell you a little bit about him. Shannon Ryan was raised in the home of his Baptist mother in Alabama, and he had dreams of being a lawyer one day. However, involvement with a bad group of friends and drug use took Shannon down a bad path in life. In 2011, Shannon and another man were involved in a string of burglaries in Alabama. During one of these crimes, they ran from the police into the woods, and Shannon was caught. He was charged with third-degree burglary and sent to prison for a 16-year sentence. In a court document from 2015, Shannon filed a lawsuit for the religious exception to, quote, allow him to grow a beard of not more than 1/2 inch in length, end quote. While he was serving his time in prison, Shannon learned about the practice of witchcraft, and when he was released from prison in 2015, he was a self-proclaimed witch and god. He told his mother that he wanted to live in the woods, to practice meditation, and be at peace with nature. So Shannon became a wandering witch who made an income by teaching apprentices and healing people. On his Facebook profile, Magnetic Kundalini, he developed quite a following. He would routinely post services and videos of spiritual advice for his followers. I want to read you one of his posts from August 15th of 2020 because I think it'll help you see what kind of, quote, witch he is. The post says, quote, okay, witches, If you feel what I've been feeling, these muggles about to start killing themselves off, and their government is setting the perfect stage for it. Remember, fall back to the nearest forest and let them fight this out. They'll kill each other off while we chill and dance naked in the woods. It doesn't matter if they know our plans. They will get eaten by the spirits of the forest." End quote. He continues on in this post to talk more about muggles and their souls. His witch services include $100 for a spiritual guidance session, $500 for a month of mentoring, and $1,000 to $10,000 of spiritual work, love, or hexes. He promises to personally come and get your demons. After speaking with the police and realizing that he was under investigation as the primary suspect, Shannon Ryan released a 52-minute video on his Facebook account entitled, quote, "Who is Leila Cavett and what is my connection to her disappearance? Let's talk about it." End quote. Now, I won't play this whole video, but if you want to check it out, I'll post a link for it in the show notes. Instead, I'm going to summarize his version of how he met Leila and what happened in those final days before her disappearance. I want to make it clear that this is Shannon's version of events, and I would take it with a huge grain of salt. Shannon claims that in January of 2019, he was living with his girlfriend and apprentice, Tiffany, in Alabama. One night, there was a thunderstorm, and they heard a knock at the door. When they opened the door, they found Leila standing outside with baby Camden and a shopping cart that was filled with her belongings. She told Shannon that her name was Leila and that her car had broken down. Shannon states that he offered to let her stay the night, and the next morning, Leila told him that her car hadn't really broken down. Instead, she told him that she had traveled from Tennessee to Alabama with a friend, and that after a fight they had, her friend had left her and Camden alone at a store with their belongings. Shannon offered to take Leila to her parents' house in Alabama, but Leila told him that she didn't want to go there because she had a dysfunctional family and that they had previously molested her. Then Shannon offered to take her to her sister, but Leila said no because her sister would make her sleep outside on the porch. Shannon claims that they drove Leila around to all of the homeless shelters and no one would take her because she allegedly caused problems in them. Shannon rants about how Leila was a negligent mother who would let Camden eat candy and junk, and he claims that Camden's teeth were rotten. Leila told Shannon that CPS wanted to take Camden away from her, and it was at this point that Shannon offered to teach her witchcraft to help her get her life back on track. Shannon said that Leila would meet strange men online and get into the car with them, but would only get money from them and never do anything else physically because she would have Camden with her. At some point, Shannon says that Leila left his home and stole a lot of his belongings, including his cat, but they became friends again and he decided to manifest a car for her. Apparently, she got this car that he manifested and then she stole from him again, so Shannon hexed her and then they made up with each other again and she was living in Georgia with her uncle. In this video, it looks like Shannon might be sitting in a park and he's very fidgety. It's like he can't sit still and he's speaking very fast, just rambling on and on.
Why is it you have a missing girl or a missing woman, and the last person that's seen her, which is me, who talked to the police, you ain't heard nothing about me? The police ain't flashed my name across the newspaper. They haven't put me on TV. They haven't put out a warrant for my arrest. Watch yourself. Watch yourself. Because you'll end up making yourself look even more foolish toward the end.
If you watch any of his videos, you'll notice that Shannon seems to ramble on and on for a large length of time about topics that don't really relate to each other or make any sense. In 2020, Shannon says that he had a new intern named Christina who lived in Hollywood, Florida. She had been diagnosed with cancer and she had some heart problems, so Shannon decided to travel to Florida and help her. While he was there, Christina contracted pneumonia and was placed in the hospital, but Shannon wanted to be near her, so he stayed in Florida. Leila called him and said that she had traded the manifested car for a truck, and Shannon wanted to buy it from her so that he would have something to drive while he was in Florida. They made a deal that Leila would drive down to Florida, sell him the truck, and stay with him to help heal Christina. They met up at the racetrack gas station. She got into his gold Lexus, and they ate in Fort Lauderdale. He claims that they took their food down to the beach, smoked some weed together, and then went out to eat again later at the Cheesecake Factory. That night, he drove her back to the racetrack gas station to get her truck, and he states that he saw Leila talking to some black guys in a car, and he thought that she